Hi, I'm Mark Rush Jr., partner at Prodigy Search. As part of our Prodigy Search Presents interview series, we're speaking with a few members of our DEI Board of Advisors as they play a major role advocating for change within their organizations and also within the sports entertainment industries as well. Our goal with this mini-series is to continue to educate and provide guidance to sports entertainment leaders as our DEI board members share valuable insights and best practices. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Sukhi Sandhu. Sukhi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Of course, Sukhi's been a long-time friend of Prodigy's, great industry practitioner within sports and entertainment, and certainly over the last number of years, an incredible resource for us on the DEI front, sitting on our DEI board, and also an advocate, and we'll learn about this throughout his background and his story for various groups, underrepresented groups. So that goes to our inclusion and belonging conversation, which we'll get to throughout the conversation today. But Sukhi, just for background, look, you've been a candidate of ours for various searches. I've always appreciated your skill set and your resume, but maybe give the listeners a brief overview of your background and your story.
Sure. Thank you very much. My name is Sukhi Sandhu. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. My parents came to Canada in the early 1950s, so they're seen as pioneers for our South Asian community. Born in a place called Duncan, British Columbia. I grew up in a very sport family, activist family, a family that understood meanings of social responsibility and helping out in the community. So those values always stay with you. Always played actively sport at a very high level. Growing up, soccer, basketball, and then played at university. And I also, from an early age, I think the intersection of sport and being involved in community politics, community service, that intersected. I guess it's been a part of my life. So I was quite involved with the Liberal Party of Canada from an early age, served on in many different capacities, was vice president of the party, and also in terms of ethnic diversity, growing the party. In terms of in immigrant communities. And I think that part of it, while I was involved in sport, coaching, in soccer and basketball at a provincial level, those issues then still resonate with you. Social justice, level playing field, opening doors for others. And so that's been me. I had many opportunity to serve our community, our city of Surrey, on different boards. Parks Commissioner. Also, I chaired a task force on intercultural inclusivity that won a National Race Relations Award. So any chance to make a difference, sometimes that gets you in trouble. But as the late John, sorry, I forget, good trouble is always good. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I look at it, I like and the way you do it and the manner in which you do it, the thoughtfulness you put behind it, Sukhi. That's why I think it's taken and received in the way it is. Look, I joked with you about we've known you as a candidate, right? So over the years, trying to recruit you for roles, and and you've been up for many senior level positions on the sports and entertainment side of things from a global events perspective. So you have a great deal of this international experience in the sports world. I love that. This is more just kind of a fun question before we get into some of the more detailed topics tied to DEI. But what has been one of the top events or experiences you have been a part of, and how did you use that experience as a learning tool in terms of future iconic global events that you've worked on?
First of all, I forgot it was John Lewis. Sorry, I just had a brain cancer.
Yeah.
Feel bad about that. But top events, every event is different. Every event has its nuances and challenges. And it's, especially if you look at it from with my identity and DEI lens, I guess first of all the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, I was stationed at the host city of Port Elizabeth. South Africa at that time was going through a major transition, abolishment of apartheid, and so our venue team was going through that transition too. You had people from the Black community, you had people from the white community. Then I didn't know the word before I arrived, but I was seen as a colored. So there's different dynamics, and you've got to work through those dynamics. There's historical issues there. There's harm there. So you've got to build relationships and navigate through that. Also, the Commonwealth Games in India, that was for a different reason. It was in my ancestral country, in India, probably the most iconic event that's ever taken place in India, sporting event. So when I arrived, the head of all the venues was a gentleman named Clint Flood from Canada, Victoria, British Columbia. He had about 30 venues under his control, but sometimes it happens with events in international events in developing nations. It was behind schedule. There's a lot of negative publicity, and then so there's pressure. You either sink or swim. That, I think, I brought a unique competency for him. I was Canadian. I understood the international standards for sport management, event management, but I also had a unique skill set that I understood the language, I understood the political landscape, and I understood the culture. So I was his sort of right-hand man from the moment I got there, filled in a lot of key areas. A lot of it was dealing with issue resolution, and that became sort of like what happens is the event industry is very small. Everyone networks. That became, so a lot of people were going on to Doha from there. And that
was your calling card. You were a problem solver.
yeah,
right?
that
You're
became my
like,
calling card. And they were like, who's this guy? So another event that was really different for me was I was asked to lead they call it the IPL, the Indian Premier Cricket League, in 2013. I think that was different because I don't come from a cricket background. So everyone thinks that Indians and cricket isn't. I did. I'd never watched a cricket match, but I was asked to be the lead for the whole city of Mohali. It's in the state of Punjab, because every year the lead person there's different local issues there. You're dealing with local government. You're dealing actually with two local governments in that host city, because the airport is in one city, the venue is in another city of hotels, and they're two different states, sorry, for the venue and the hotels and the airports. So you got to work across not only one government level, but two, in terms of policing. I'm just in a meeting, sorry. Sorry, they were having a meeting inside, so I have to come out here. So that was challenging. It was also interesting to see the passion for cricket, how a league of that innovation in sport, and how the framework for the IPL, that was very interesting. I think the last event that really stands out for me is, I mean, there's many, but having to lead the Doha GOALS conference, social responsibility in sport. That was always a conference. GOALS is a gathering of all sports leaders. So that conference. Yeah, thank you. So basically that conference was right to the Emir's office. That's how high level it was. And then that was, for the first time in 2015, that was going to be taken internationally. So there was I guess an agreement to have it in Los Angeles on the, in partnership with the World Special Olympic Games. So when I arrived, I still never forget that. So you get different challenges. When I arrived in LA, I remember my wife messaging me and saying, look at your Google. That was the day of the Swiss raids for FIFA. So I arrived, I was supposed to have a meeting a few hours later with Fox. They canceled. Then I had supposed to have a meeting with Coca-Cola and with Disney over the next 24 hours that were prearranged. They all canceled. So I had to really understanding. I had a number of speakers that canceled too, but some good friends, but they were worried about some of the allegations of corruption, etc. So that event brought in a number of just challenges. I had 3 months to put this together. It's a 12-month project. Then you've got extenuating circumstances. Had to build trust with local authorities and stakeholders, whether it's the Dodgers, whether it's the Lakers, whether it's just different stakeholders, government. Then I also, and also with other speakers. So I was really proud of that event because I think I had almost 80 speakers, but majority of them came based on trust and came without any fee. And that event really sort of moved the needle forward in terms of DEI in sport.
That's the history, that's the background, and it's amazing that goes back as far as it does, right? Because people think the last 3 years is where this all, well, no, there's a history there, especially with you and your experience. And now fast forwarding to today with you though, and we're nearing, so this is good news, right? We're nearing the capstone, we're nearing the end. You're pursuing your master's degree or in the final stages of finalizing your master's degree in diversity and inclusion from Tufts University. So why do it? Why get the master's, and talk to the group about the value in the program that you're involved in.
I think I realized soon after the 2015 event at Doha Goals that I had a particular skill set. I had a particular passion for social justice. That wasn't based on just that event, just lifelong. I'd always stood up for inequities or injustice. And I also wanted to help shape sport for the better. So I think what I did was I started researching for master's programs in DEI. It was still, introductory phase. I think there's only 2 or 3 master's programs. Tufts was one of them. And I applied to Tufts and got admitted. I soon realized that, that the area I wanted to go into was DEI in sport. But I also realized that too often my Asian identity is left out of the conversation. So majority of organizations in North America do not have a holistic vision towards DEI in sport. So those were things that came up. So I've always been a spokesman. I mean, spoken out, whether it's the 2010 Olympic Games, whether it's grassroots soccer in Canada, spoken out for people that are historically underrepresented in sport. The master's program, the reason I took it mostly is because it gave me a framework. I knew that my lived experience wasn't good enough. And that's one thing I think that's too many practitioners think that lived experience allows you to be a change maker. No, you've got to have the framework. How do I bring DEI into an organization? How do I convince people? How do I navigate this conversation within an organization? How do I deal with resistance? How do I deal with change models, systemic barriers, etc.? So, and then from there, I think many times once I got into the program, I went to as you know me, I went to a number of conferences in sport, DEI in sport, because over the last 2-3 years, there's been many. And then I've also participated in many on virtually. And I found time after time, my Asian identity was missing. It got to the point where it was affecting my mental health. I was thinking of leaving the program. Much more harm was created because I would go to a conference, spend the money, the registration, the airfare, hotel, etc. And I'd probably be the only Asian in the room, or maybe another, and then there would be no conversation about Asian identity, Indigenous people, etc. And you walk away, yes, the DEI in sport is being talked, but when you're not part of privileged society, and when you are part of historically underrepresented society, and you're not part of it, it's a pretty empty feeling leaving and going back to the airport. So when I was on the verge of leaving, I realized, hold on here, I knew that South Asians or Asians aren't really a part of the landscape of sport in North America, particularly in Canada, at the leadership level, at the board composition level, player development level, coaching level, match official level. So, and any work is really performative. So I started researching more, and then I knew there's a large Asian community in the UK. And then I started to read that they had just, the government had proceeded with a code of governance for all organizations that are in receipt or seek public funds, particularly national governing bodies. And they had just in 2021 added another layer to their code of governance. One was transparency, accountability, integrity, democracy. And the next layer they had added was diversity and inclusion. And I soon realized that this was the first code of governance throughout the world that had a racial equity lens beyond board composition. Many are just restricted and limited to that. So this talked about coaching, development, player development, match officiating, leadership, volunteers, suppliers. Those were the indicators in terms of ED&I, they call it. And then I also, yeah, and then I also started to realize that Asians were part of the conversation, whether it was stakeholder groups like Kick It Out and Sporting Equals, or other nonprofit groups that are advocacy groups. They're also part of the conversation in terms of academic research in sport, in terms of racism and discrimination. There were many researchers that had specialized on Asians in sport, Asians in English football, etc. And in the English FA, I was surprised to see that a population that is only 7.5%, the Asian population, whereas in Canada we're about 17%. Yet, you had a board member of the Asian FA from the English FA that was from the Asian community. You had the head of DEI from the Asian community. You had a number of other roles. And then I saw with Premier League clubs, a number of the EDI leads were from the Asian community. So that inspired me. And that's where
the UK is ahead, right? Yeah, like you said, in Canada and the US, that's the UK is ahead in terms of South Asians in sport, and that population and et cetera, it's lacking. There's not enough opportunity here. I'd say afterthought, but it seems like from listening to you, it's an afterthought, or not much attention has been paid to these talented individuals, which is unfortunate.
I think the UK is ahead in terms of their, not only the Asian, I'm not restricting it to the Asian. I think it's their vision is holistic. They're doing the same for the Asian community that for the Black community and other underrepresented groups. I think what they're also ahead is that they've realized that it's not just about setting targets or having a Rooney rule or placing people in leadership positions. It's about having a structure, having a policy in place that can be monitored, that can be assessed, that can be evaluated, that has outcomes and also changes in process and procedures. So they came out with an equality standard back in 2006, and it was voluntary. Now what they've done is mandated it. They've legislated it. So every organization that seeks public funds has to adhere to it. So what they've done is they've taken it way beyond, which is in North America, which is mostly performative, and said, we want to see real change. And real change is not easy. There's resistance, but we need to, whether it's cricket, whether it's equestrian, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, etc. We need to be reflective of our population in every facet of the organization. So, and that's the difference between North America and the UK.
So let's talk about that. This will be my final question, right? So if you reflect on the capstone work, the research you've done for everything the UK is doing, where does Canada, where does the US, where is the sports and entertainment industry in North America go when it comes to South Asian sport? What can be done better, whether that be accountability or education, et cetera? what's the, I mean, I'm asking you to look in the crystal ball here, a little bit of what's the future hold, but how do we get to that spot, Suki?
I think, Mark, it's once again, it's not just the South Asian community. I think it's the entire lens. So after the murder of George Floyd and the amazing efforts of the Black Lives Matter movement, it not only created change or the awareness and the need for change for the Black community, but also all underrepresented groups. I'd like to see the sports industry evolve in terms of DE&I and policy and lens and framework, whereby we start first with our Indigenous people, and so we if they can be done in the UK, it can be done easily here. It's just that the Asian community here doesn't have a voice. The Indigenous people don't have a voice. And it's always about doing the right thing. Just because people are in leadership positions, that doesn't mean, or missing from that space, missing from being at that table, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a holistic vision. So what needs to happen is standardization. If we look at all of our professional leagues, we've got, some have EDI managers or DEI managers as a vice president, some have it at a managerial, some have it at an entry level. There's no standardization across even one league that this is what we need you to do. This is a framework. This is the transparency on your websites. So everyone is working in silos. That's first of all. You need to also have a holistic vision. So I think that's where the leagues themselves and their head offices have to create that standardization, and ensure that we're not creating new barriers that with the DEI case or cause, that we don't now create another form of barriers for certainly underrepresented groups.
Yeah, you said barriers, Suki, and I'm equally as concerned, and we've had